I think I'm right in saying that for every angler, there is always one place that will stand out in their memory for whatever reason that may be. This is that place for me. The fish may not be big, but there is a sense of mystery surrounding these two mystical pools. I fished these particular lakes from the age of 10. They were quiet and largely forgotten about. A real haven for all aspects of nature. Carp also resided in the densely weeded ponds, which provided a challenge for any angler that wished to catch one. Over the years that have passed since I last fished these beautiful lakes, I'd forgotten about the excitement of catching one of the special carp living in these ponds. After having the last few months to reflect on my fishing due to the recent circumstances of not being able to get out on the bank, I decided it was time to revisit these forgotten pools. Well, good evening, and you join me on a beautiful evening on a stunning little lake that I'm lucky enough to fish on one of my club tickets. And it's actually my first session out since the lockdown measures were eased and fishing was deemed, the government released that you can go fishing. Now, I have fished this a couple of times prior to lockdown, but had very little success, and I want to give it a really good go this season. There's not huge fish in it, but there are fish that are definitely worth catching, and it's typically 9 times out of 10 when I have visited before, I've been the only one on the lake, so it's a real nice little forgotten lake that I can really come out and do a few evenings on here and there. But today I've managed to get out for a couple of hours, all set up, and hopefully we can get ourselves into a fish. Now, just because it is a water that doesn't hold big fish, it does not mean by any means that it isn't a difficult water to fish. There's a lot of snags out there in the water, silt on the bottom, lily pads, and also big reed beds where the fish have got a lot of channels where you can actually fish to. So location is going to be key on this particular lake, trying to find feeding fish. Unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of time this evening, so I didn't have a chance to try and find, or at least I didn't see any fish when I had my initial walk around. But like tonight, it's going to be a case of fishing up towards snags. I think I've got my two rods out, and they're both, one of them locked up against that reed bed over my shoulder, and one locked up against an overhanging tree over my shoulder as well. So it's definitely by no means going to be an easy water to get some fish on, but I'm excited for what this season brings. The first trip did result in a blank, but just before I left, I did bait up a likely looking spot for my next visit a few days later. I knew that I had to try and draw the carp out of the weed with bait, as they would be very comfortable raiding the natural food sources buried deep within the weed. Well, the swim I've decided to jump in this evening is absolutely full of features. As you just saw at the end of my last trip, which was actually yesterday, I put in 3 to 4 pouchfuls of boilies just as I was leaving, just before it got dark, in this particular swim. Out in front of me there's a big bed of lily pads, and there's created 2 sort of channels because you've got reed beds either side of the swim, and either side of that lily pad you've got 2 channels that sort of go out into the middle of the lake, and that's where I focused the majority of those boilies, and that's where I've got the 2 rods this evening. I haven't seen too much activity when I first got here, so I thought it was probably best where I know I've got a bit of bait to give it a go. But my only concern, it is a shallow lake, and when I say shallow, I think it averages a couple of foot all the way around the lake, and it's just getting to know the lake again. Like I said, when I fished it 10 years ago, it was very much, you were likely to get a bite the closer you were to the reeds, and I think it's just going to be a case of working out if that's still the case. But today, this evening at least, I'm happy to keep the rods out on those 2 channels where I know I've got a bit of bait, and hopefully the carp would have been munching this morning. Well, I think I'm going to make a bit of a tactical change for this evening. I'm going to bring in both rods and drop off some tackle that I don't need to carry at the car, take around 1 rod and see if we can catch ourselves a carp stalking. I haven't seen much activity in my swim, and I'm convinced there is a chance of a bite, but I just don't think it's here. So I'm going to see if we can stalk one out the edge. When fishing, it is so easy to become lost in your surroundings, taking in the evening sun and watching carp cruise in amongst the weed. Fishing is not necessarily always about catching, it's about being in the moment, close to nature, and the challenge to outwit the fish you plan to catch. I was back out just on dawn the following morning, in the area the carp was showing the night before. There was definitely feeding carp in the area, with the telltale signs of bubbles breaking the surface every few minutes. After spotting a feeding carp close to the weeds on the end of the lake, I quickly made my way round to put a bait in the area. It wasn't long before I was attached to one of these hard-fighting fish. Well, there we go, first farm pond common. What a beautiful fish. Doesn't get any better than that. What a result. Beautiful. Today's session's actually been about trying to find the fish. I got to the venue at about 5:30 this morning, so I felt that gave me probably the best chance of trying to spot some sort of fish activity out on first light, and it's paid off. I did take a look at the second lake, the top lake, which I was fishing in the last 2 sessions, and unfortunately didn't spot any activity, but it was apparent there was a few fish moving on this bottom lake, which is where I ended my last session, and it's paid off. I've had that lovely little common, probably around the £5 mark. It was a nice fish to start my account with on these 2 farm ponds, which I'm absolutely over the moon with, especially when we don't really know what the stock is in these particular lakes. There's been reports around 7-8 years ago that it was poached heavily and the stock pretty much dwindled out, but it's good to see that there are still a few good carp in here, and there's definitely a few moving. Now it's sort of got into the day, the wind's got up and the sun's up in the sky. The carp have, you can tell, retreated into that weed where they feel safe. There's a few ripples in amongst there, and I haven't really seen too much in open water, so I think it's very much going to be a first light sort of bite, and then again going into the evening. I've only got the morning. I'm going to give it enough of 20 minutes, 30 minutes to see if we can get ourselves an upper, but just happy to get off the mark. Well, there we go, another farm pond gem. Lovely little carp, caught just before dusk, doing a bit of stalking in the margins. What a result that is. Let's slip her back. Back out again for a quick evening session, and I've settled on the bottom left hand corner of the lake. Again, there's no one else fishing either lakes, and I've had a quick walk around both lakes. I've baited a few spots on the bottom lakes which I think are going to do me a bite later on this evening, but I've decided to settle on the top lake and come into the bottom left hand corner because I know it's a deeper water. I haven't seen much activity, so I'm imagining the fish are still held up in that weed from the afternoon sun. It has been absolutely sweltering hot today, so I'm imagining they're in the weed, and just as the temperature stops to drop and the sun goes down behind me like it is at the moment, I feel the fish are going to head out of the weed and hopefully onto the baited spots. That's the plan. I think we'll give it an hour or so up here, and then I think we'll go and check on the pre-baited spots down on the bottom lake. There wasn't much sign of fish activity on the top lake, so I made my way to the pre-baited spots on the bottom pond, and it looked perfect for a bite. Just before dark is when my rod burst into life and a huge splash exploded on the surface. However, the fish had sadly buried itself deep within the weed, but I managed to retrieve my rig still intact, which ensured the carp was not carrying the hook. There was certainly plenty of carp in the area. As I repositioned my rod, before I had a chance to even pull it down, away it shot and I was hooked into yet another carp. Well, needless to say, I'm absolutely gutted. Just lost 2 fish right at the death within a space of 10 to 15 minutes. The first one just went and buried itself straight into the weed and I couldn't get it back out and it spat the hook. And then the second one, trying to avoid to have the repeat of the first, I had a lot of size straight onto it and it just spat the hook, and it's a real shame because it felt like a decent fish. But I've finally found a tactic that's going to work. I think the pop-ups just above the chod on the bottom of the lake, the sill, leaf debris, weed, I think that's the way forward, and it's definitely paying off with a few bites.
I started off using bottom baits on my first few sessions, however it quickly became apparent that there was a lot of debris on the lake bed, so I made a change to low line pop-ups fished on a Ronnie rig using CC Moore's NS1 pop-ups. On top of this, I would scatter a handful of Pacific tuna boilies and halibut pellets to encourage the carp out of the large weed beds and hopefully onto the baited spots.
I think the last few sessions have certainly shown that on this particular venue, keeping mobile has been absolutely key, especially with limited amount of time on the bank. Also, baiting a few spots when I first arrived to the lake to allow me the best opportunity of actually dropping on some feeding fish. If one spot isn't producing any fish, then what I'll do is I'll move on to the next, and it's certainly proved successful in the last few sessions. Conditions today are a little bit different to what they have been. It's a little bit cooler, and we've also had some rain over the past few days, which has turned the water a muddy brown colour. Not ideal conditions for spotting fish, but there's definitely some movement out in the weeds, so there's definitely fish about. Fishing these two lakes over the past few weeks has certainly reminded me why I fell in love with this place as a kid. Absolutely beautiful. It's just nice to be in the peace and quiet, surrounded by nothing but nature, and just seeing the fish cruise about. Doesn't get much better than this. Well, I can't tell you how pleased I am with this one. In all those years that I used to fish this venue, I'd never once caught a mirror from these two lakes. And what a cracker that is. There can't be very many, but that is certainly one special fish. And there's the other side, equally as perfect. What a result!
These two forgotten pools will always have a place in my memory, and I hope this video puts across that fishing doesn't always have to be about catching big fish and loads of them. Thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and until the next time, I will catch you later.